I think you'll agree that this is very useful. We did have a student, I think last quarter, I've forgotten her name, who talked about at school going to get a degree in translation at SOAS.
That's probably a good way to do it.
This is a different route, and many do it this way. So please, if you have questions, we have another 20 or so minutes in the room, or we have the room until 5. Ask away. Stephen? Oh, and then Silver?
I'm wondering how much translation you do from English into Japanese. If you do that at all.
Right, zero. I do
zero.
I don't do any.
Okay.
Yeah,
So it's all together. Okay.
I mean, right, like you could. Yeah, I'm just not good enough to write Japanese. Like, it would never make money for me. It would never be practical in in that kind of way. And I think that, right, and again, like, I don't need to be the person to do that. There are plenty of Japanese people who could write much better Japanese. Right? So that's just my take on it. But right, a lot of people work in different directions. Right? As long as you think about what you're doing, why you're doing things.
Thank you for the interesting talk, Joe. When you're thinking of pricing, I mean, obviously you have to balance what's manageable for you, but you also need to balance the needs of what can I charge to get this bid without undercutting the other translators so much that I bring down the rate as a whole for the community. How do you reconcile those two needs with each other?
This is a big debate. That's a really sharp question, actually. Have you been reading the forums and stuff? And because
Actually, in all honesty, I was a dancer for several years, and the Arabic dance community in Seattle has had a huge problem with our rates being ruined by students undercharging.
I see. Yeah, I mean, I think that, right, it's hard to be prescriptivist about anything when it comes to rates, and I think people need to set their own things, and I mean, I sort of understand the position of people who talk about being undercut, right? But yeah, I wonder about, in the case you're talking about students, like, I think at least in this realm, there's going to be enough of a difference, like in the quality of what you're getting, right? That you're sort of getting what you pay for it. And I've seen translators talking about, right, like, you know, the people that are doing this sort of like huge projects for document discovery, you know, often there's a separate translation element to that. And you know, they'll give it to a very, very large agency who will send it out to people and asking for like very, very bottom of the barrel rates, right? As some people on the list see it. And these are people, right? But these are people who have been doing this for 30 years. They're established in Japan. They have networks of clients. You know, they might be on retainer with a company that they just like go and translate whenever. And even if they don't translate, they get paid anyway, right, for that money. So I've heard people say maybe that's a problem, but probably not, because we're not really in the same industry. We're not really in competition with each other. You know what I mean? I think that there's a difference of level. Yeah, and with this kind of thing, we'll just stick with that. But that's the main thing, is that you know, you need to get. My advice to someone who's trying to set their own rate is that you need to figure out what's going to be worth it for you, and you know, ask around, ask opinions and stuff like that. But you have to set it yourself, and don't let people bully you. Also, just to mention the cat thing again. People will also try to get you to give them fuzzy discounts, which is, I showed you the translation memory, how it comes up with like, so they'll have these schemes. So it's like, it's 100% match, we'll give you the full rate. If it's an 80% match, we'll give you like 70% of the rate. You know, so, but not taking into account, right, the vital fact that like the same things can come up in different contexts, and then all of that is out the window, right, and you're losing. Other than things like that, I think, you know, people will go from 5 cents a word to 50 cents a word, and it's really like, it's anybody's game in between there. And it's based on what you offer, how well you can promise it, and how well you can deliver it. So it's really an individual case by case.
I have like a two-part question for you, Joe. You gave these kind of seven steps that you go through when negotiating contracts, that sort of thing. And since essentially you're trying to make a living out of this, what is a reasonable time for you to expect to get paid after you've done the job, after you've submitted a big project? Presumably, if you've gone through all 7 steps, a major, massive project. What is reasonable for you? And part 2 is, have you encountered any trouble, any issues with this?
These are very good questions too. To answer the first one, the second one first, I haven't really had any trouble with it. I've heard a lot of people complaining, and this is something that comes up on the mailing lists. Again, Honyaku, it's really good. And the JIT has a mailing list too, which is very valuable. And people will sort of, so in terms of like scammers and whatever kind of thing like that, people will sort of, if they get a request from a place they haven't heard of, they'll say, is this a real agency? Do they pay? This kind of thing. For me, what's reasonable, right, you have to be pretty elastic because like the invoices that I send out say like net 45 or something, so that means they need to pay within 45 days of I've sent them the invoice. And it doesn't always happen that way, but usually it's sort of an ongoing relationship. Like I have a client in Japan, for example. If I do the work in January, I'll bill them for it at the end of February, and then I'll get paid for it at the end of March, which seems like a long time, but if it's ongoing, it sort of cycles around, and you end up having a decent flow of it coming in. But right, generally a month to 2 months. After that, you might want to get in touch with them.
Do you ever have occasion to ask for something up front if it's a bigger job?
Right, that's something, and right, I tend to do more scattered small jobs, but right, with I mentioned doing books, a couple of books, and just things that are more expensive or something like that. And it's really like, again, self-employment. Like you have all the freedom to make these rules and to just make these decisions yourself, but then you have to make them yourself, right? So yeah, you really just have to figure that out.
I'm curious about how your academic career fits into this business. You got a BA, then you went into translation, then you went to graduate school,
Yeah.
and then you're in translation again. Was the graduate education of any use? And how did you make the choice to go into translation again?
Well, okay, just to clarify, I'm still in the MA. I just started.
Oh.
I'm at the end of, this is my first year
Oh.
of the MA. So I haven't completely gone back. But right, really I'm here getting an MA and I'm not thinking about pursuing a PhD really because I'm not very interested in academia, and that's really the kind of thing that you would do with that, because there's no reason to get a PhD to do this kind of translation, right? And there's no sense in getting a PhD to do literary translation, because you're not going to get to do that either. You're going to have to work in you have to teach, you have to do these other things. At least this is from my searching, because I want to do literary translation. But I think it's very, very hard to make a living off of that up front without the support of an institution or something like that. So it's sort of an experiment, I guess, is the answer. And it has connected me with a lot of people that have similar interests, given me a lot of resources to do that, and I'm getting, I'm reading a lot of things that help me think about how I want to do literary translation, and right, if I'm being really honest, the MA program that I'm in now probably won't add that much value to what I'm actually able to provide to a business customer, right, that wants a press release translated or something like this. But it does give me another line on my resume that makes people give me more work like that and give me more trust with more work like that, so that hopefully I can sort of see if there's a way to balance making a living with the business kind of things and sort of on a hobby level, or whatever level I can work out to do the literary and the more creative types of things. So it's a thing that I'm working through, right? And it's a question I ask myself every day. Doing here.
Did you say you translated the whole book?
Yes.
And what kind of book is that, and how does that offer of the job or come?
Yeah.
How did you get to do
Well,
that?
the books that I translated, so it's sort of a long story, but basically I got them through an agency, a translation agency in San Francisco, and they're one of these that only does Japanese and English, and they're very well known. They do a lot of good work. And I think that this wouldn't normally be the way to do that, but this was, and really it was the book was coming from a small, like, spiritual kind of group, and they wanted these translations done. So they went to this agency, and then the agency came to me. And so if I've been looking around, honestly, because I did this 2 years ago, I think, 2 summers ago, and I've been keeping an eye out, and I've never seen them in English. I got paid for the job through the agency and all this stuff, and right. So sometimes it's a good point that the agencies can sometimes stand in the way of. There were a lot of things about this book that I really felt like I needed to talk to the people who wrote it or who wanted it translated, right? Some real questions that I had, and I would try to go through the agent to have these answered. There was very little feedback, so right, I sort of wondered about that, but and that was right. So that was kind of the circumstances. So I went ahead and I did the books the best I could. I made all of my, I put things in the way I thought best, and made a lot of comments, sort of, and suggestions of how things should be.
So this agency was asked by the publisher, original publisher or author, to find the translator and translate. Is that how the agency
Exactly.
works? And do you know about this agency? What sort of, is that specifically religious thing or spiritual thing they're using? In other words, I am asking if you want to translate a book of certain kind of your interest rather than this practical business, technical oriented thing. What other way than trying to find publisher on your own? Or if you can't get the agent, is there any other ways?
Right. Right. In terms of getting the literary stuff, I think that I'm still trying to.
I'm not talking about the literary stuff. Literary stuff is there's something between, say, literature and the practical, technical business thing. Something like, I don't know, the important social, cultural issues that you feel that should be translated to let the English population should know. I guess in that sense the same as literature, but
Sort of, yeah. But I think I understand what you mean. Like not things that are maybe seen as like highbrow or like high literature or something like this. Right. And so, well, getting those jobs through that agency was sort of a fluke. I don't think that agency usually handles that kind of thing. And I was surprised when it came. But I think that is one way that things like that do get translated. But I think that Right, if there's a very specific like sort of interest or topic or an author or something that you want to translate, the best route would have to be a direct route. So being involved with whatever organizations or like movements or people, figures that you're thinking of in whatever ways you can. That's the way that I would try to do that.
So you want to do some way of finding a publisher?
Right.
Any other questions? All right, well then, thank you again, and let's thank, did you have a question? Okay, let's thank Joe again for terrific presentation today.